I bet I can tell what age range of people you dislike most without even meeting you. That's because everyone dislikes a certain age of people more than any of the others. That age is teenagers. They're at that awkward stage in life where they aren't cute kids anymore, and they aren't quite responsible adults. Anytime you see a group of them in public, they're often loud, unaware, and to put it simply, annoying. So that begs the question. Why does every anime seem to make their cast mostly teenagers? Is it to relate to their targeted viewers? And why exactly do these people have to be in that specific age range? What is the obsession with high school? But before I overwhelm you with questions, I should find some answers. So is the overuse of teenage characters in anime an attempt to appeal to an audience? The name shonen means young boy, and that name is indicative of their target audience. So yes, the large amount of teenage casts is likely an attempt to relate with their viewers. However, I just think that adults tend to be more realistic for the roles they play in their shows, and that's because shonen anime, or any entertaining anime with thrills and suspense, usually has some high stakes. We're talking about people's lives, or the political state of a country, or reality itself. And entrusting that fate to an adolescent seems ridiculous. I'm willing to accept that a world is unrealistic, maybe possesses some supernatural characteristics. I love a lot of anime with power systems and fantastical abilities, but it's hard for me to accept when certain stupid shit happens. Jotaro is supposed to be 17 years old, and he looks like this. Can we be for real, bro? This is an NFL linebacker, not a 17-year-old. And even more odd is the way he acts. He's supposed to be a delinquent who skips school all the time, but then he's also the most cunning, cool-headed stand user in this group of what should be much more experienced professionals than him, considering he just got all of his abilities. Cool-headedness is not the sort of characteristic you'd expect from someone known to get into fights and skip school. Don't get me wrong, I love Jotaro as a character. He's my second favorite in that part behind Polnareff, but it kinda seems like they took the mind of a 35-year-old, put it into the body of a 25-year-old, and said he was 17. And I think JoJo's corrects this hard-to-believe character design in part 4. Josuke acts like a teenager. He plays video games, gets into fights when people insult his haircut, and he hangs out with his friends that go to school with him. Those are the hobbies of a 17-year-old. What are Jotaro's hobbies? Reading about airplanes and ships, studying marine biology, particularly starfish, and watching detective shows. That is some of the most unk shit I have ever heard. When I was in high school, I didn't want to study anything. Detective shows become appealing when you're 40 years or older, and reading about airplanes and ships? Old people don't even like doing that, let alone a 17-year-old, who, mind you, is supposed to be a delinquent. Another thing I find consistent across every anime is teenagers that have crazy upbringings. I feel like if they wanted to be relatable, they would create more average character origin stories. Ichigo's mom is murked when he is a kid, and he feels guilty about not having been able to do anything about it. This led to him being a much more responsible teenager, more worried about protecting his friends' lives and typical teenager activities. This level of moral integrity is not common with regular people's lives. The kids I knew in high school at that age were going to the bathroom during lunch to piss on the walls. Some of the kids in my friend group had this game where they would climb up on the stalls and try to shit into the toilet from as far away as possible. Being a morally good person takes time. The best people you know have probably done or been the victim of some horrible tragedies. In some way or another, people need to experience morally conflicting issues in order to develop a morally strong character. The idea that these characters will have this level of moral foundation so early is unlikely. I feel like some other tropes of character stories could be more relatable. Instead of characters' parents being murdered, why not talk about divorced parents and the struggle of a splintering household? That's a very common struggle for adolescents. Instead of being bullied, why not make the struggle be about social anxiety and how hard it is to make friends, being an outsider? I think the reason these stories aren't chosen is because they aren't shocking. When you watch a character get murdered or get bullied, it's ironically very entertaining. And the reason a lot of anime stay away from writing a really relatable teenage story is probably because it would be kinda boring to a lot of people. When I think of really relatable characters that don't have plot armor disguised as perseverance, and actually struggle with real issues, the anime that come to mind are not popular. Kaiji is a very relatable character. He messes up even after saying he'll do the right thing. He has no powers, no friends to bail him out, and is a piece of shit trying to make his life right. That's more realistic to you and me than any shonen you can think of, whether you like it or not. Chiyuki killed herself because of a knee injury that kept her from ice skating, the one thing she placed her value in most, not realizing that her family placed their value in her. These stories are hard pills to swallow, and they aren't fun to watch or to relate to, but I tend to appreciate the more honest tellings of human nature as opposed to the shock and aura-farming characters. And even though that's not ideal for someone like me, it's likely why the industry doesn't make very relatable teenage characters. Because they don't sell, it's more lucrative to make these clickbaity character tropes nobody asks for or likes. But that makes you wonder, why do they have to be teenagers? Why not just make the adult acting and looking characters be adults? There are lots of shows out there that deal with the same themes, but feel so much more believable because the right characters are designed to deal with them. Something I noticed when I was younger, and even now, is that the storylines in shonen are not coming-of-age stories. They're usually about facing adversity and placing value in human life, none of which is a concern of teenagers. Something you'd expect from a teenager is worrying about how the opposite gender views them, feeling the desire for independence for the first time, and figuring out their place in the world. The point I'm making is that the development in these characters usually has nothing to do with the character's age. I'm not saying this to shame these characters, their fans, or even their creators. These are great role models. Hell, they're even some people's heroes. And I think that's a great thing. My point is that they're overused and misrepresentative. There are so many teenager MCs out there with some tragic origin that it is becoming a little redundant. And especially in the newer generation of shonen that are coming out nowadays. They're exploring much darker themes, and it makes me wonder why they're still choosing teenagers to deal with these issues. Yuji's character is surrounded with so much loss and agony, and he is in constant conflict with justifying his reason to live, because of what he carries inside. These are the sort of things you might see in a war film, not from a 15-year-old boy. Denji is 18 years old, dealing with having to sell his organs to get by, then being stabbed to death, then all of the freaky ass shit that goes on in this series. It all just seems so forced and creepy. Like, these stories would be much better if they made these characters adults. Most people know the story of Nightwing. He doesn't want to be Robin anymore because Batman's methods are manipulative and more cruel than he will stand for. He also groomed Dick Grayson to become a crime fighter in order for him to take over his mantle when he was too old. Every kid would think that's a cool thing to do. But when Dick becomes older, he realizes that he was robbed of a childhood and placed in danger by someone working from a place of selfishness. So Robin becomes Nightwing, independent from his adopted father. This story shows a lot about going from a teenager to an adult and independence. The things you thought were normal when you were younger now look much different. They're not just weird, they're wrong, and you have to accept that and move on. I chose this example because it's a great story about coming of age in a fantastical world. We don't have superheroes in real life, and anime, despite many of its characters being teenagers, doesn't really tell anything about that kind of life honestly or realistically. But people aren't coming to shonen to see realistic. I think everyone who likes shonen can admit there are a lot of times when you have to say to yourself, yeah, that's pretty stupid. Whether it's a plot problem, or a character flaw, or a choice of setting, there are a lot of times when anime watchers have to admit that a lot of dumb shit happens in their favorite show. One setting in particular, though, that has always bothered me is high school. It seems like so many anime take place in high school, and with all of the cool possibilities of a setting, it makes no sense why they should be in high school. It could be outer space, Edo period Japan with samurai, a completely fictional world with pirates, ninjas, or titans, or something more simple but still exciting like a mysterious island with unknown properties. Out of all the possibilities, the most used one is high school. Why? I can tell you for one thing, I hated high school. I was the weird anime kid with lots of acne. I did not fit in, and people definitely picked on me. Did I deserve it? Yes, absolutely. But I don't think anybody is super fond of their high school days. You're trapped in a building for 7 hours studying shit you don't care about, and there's a bunch of people you don't like trapped there with you. Speaking of those people, why don't we see classic tropes every high school has in anime? Why isn't there a school hoe? The dirtiest bitch you've ever seen that would genuinely sleep with a homeless cockroach for a bag of chips? Why isn't there a school scammer that has stolen laptop chargers from the special needs classroom for the 5th time this week, selling them out of his locker? Why isn't there a fight every week? Not over who's strongest or for the sake of getting better, but because one of them called the other one musty. Why aren't there bitches pulling at each other's hair over some Takis? What about all those tropes? Why don't we see them in anime? Perhaps high school life is different in Japan. It still doesn't explain why these high school characters act so unrealistically. I've never been to a high school in Japan, but I can tell you with certainty, they don't have manipulators there, and they don't have tsunderes. Those are anime inventions, because anybody stupid enough to say the dumbass shit these characters are saying is only going to get laughed at in real life. But I digress. Have you ever wondered why Jujutsu High has this big ass high school for 10 students and 1 teacher? Have you ever been watching codegeass and thought to yourself, why are all of the major players in this global scale war conveniently placed in this one high school? Are there no other high schools in the world. Not only that, why are they all in the same exact club? Why do they never do any actual schoolwork? Why does there seem to be a festival or parade every episode? Why do all the female characters just throw themselves at Lelouch? Why are they all entrusting the fate of the known world to a group of teenagers? Because this show is retarded. The high schoolers don't act like high schoolers, and the high schools don't act like high schools. I feel like these shows would be so much better if they just didn't take place in a high school. I'm okay with the story taking place in high school and having teenage characters that inhabit that high school, but when the story has to start pulling shit out of its ass to make up for this setting and character choice, it really makes you question the author's thinking. What's so special about high school anyway? I'm sure appealing to the age of the audience doesn't cost this much of a sacrifice. You shouldn't have to compromise the construction of a story just to fit into a stereotype. Surely there is something else at play. And I think I know what that reason is. Authors like putting their fantasies into their creations. Most of the time this is a very fun and innocent creative choice. Miyazaki puts the dream worlds in his head onto the big screen, and Watanabe tells the stories of bounty hunters and samurai in his anime. But there are also creators that put other kinds of fantasy in their creations. And this is a big complaint in the anime community, the fan service predicament. It can really remove your attention from a show when the female characters are just there to show off their bodies, or when the female cast is designed to love and adore certain male characters unconditionally like robots. It's very annoying as someone who isn't 7 years old. But the fantasies this video is discussing are just about high school. It's not fun or gross. It's kind of just sad. To think that a creator with all their endless imagination would choose a setting as overdone as high school's really makes me think they do it to reminisce, to remember the good old days, so to speak. And that's sad because high school fucking sucks. To think that the good old days were in high school. Damn, bro. What kind of reality are you living to think that those were the best days of your life? Sure, there was much less responsibility and more time to do things you like, and more forgiveness in doing things that were wrong. But grow up. High school is life in easy mode. Most of the shit in your life is done for you, and everything else is pretty hard to mess up. I know people that couldn't tell the difference between a country and a continent that graduated, man. Shit was sweet. Straight up, sugar, cookies. I definitely didn't enjoy it, but that shit wasn't hard. And just because life changes doesn't mean it necessarily is for the worst. Yeah, work sucks, but so did school. At least now you have the decision of what to do with your life. I don't think these made-up tropes of teenage characters are ever going to stop, nor will the use of high school being the setting for an anime. But there are a few anime out there that seem to do my argument justice. I think Soul Eater tells the troubles of a teenager decently well, even in a world that's quite different from our own. So there's definitely hope out there. And obviously I'm not speaking on shonen as a whole, there are plenty of exceptions. I'm just making this video because this idea is so played out, and it wasn't anything particularly special to begin with. When I see a teenager MC now, I just expect them to have some troubled past. None of them will act like actual teenagers. And of course, this group of talented young people will hone their abilities in a special high school for gifted students. But just imagine for a second that an anime creator is making their show. And in the endless pool of recycled ideas and tropiness, they desire to make something different. Something to break the mold. They choose a setting that is refreshing and exciting. They choose a cast of characters that you relate to, not by appearance or by age, but by experience. Maybe this show is incredibly successful, or maybe it's more underground. Regardless of its popularity, the creator took the time to think of something new. And then they acted on that idea, thrusting themselves into the endless and overworked industry of anime. And they did this not to make a fortune, not even to simply entertain, but to make a story full of so much life that it breathes life into those that watch it. And the ideas of the creator are passed on to the viewers. This series of events made possible because someone had the balls to believe in themselves and in their genuine, undisturbed ideas. There are definitely anime out there like that. However, I think they're overwhelmed with the vastness of complacency and regurgitated schemes. But that also makes them worth a watch, because they dared to be different, because they didn't compromise with average, and because they desired to make art, not entertainment.